Hi, everybody. Bill De La Cruz here, and you are listening to the Origination Point Podcast. Sometimes it takes me a while to record podcasts because I have to really think about the topics and what I want to share. This particular topic I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's rooted in leadership and how men and women leaders are treated differently, and how they lead in the things that they can get away with, and basically just a general approach. And I've always known in all the years I've done leadership development and facilitated and coached and worked with leaders that the system that we operate in is a patriarchal system, in that it was designed for men to be successful. And I want to talk about that today. And the title of this podcast is The Quiet Failure of the Patriarchy. And I want to start with a definition. So essentially what patriarchy is, it's a social, political, and economic system in which men hold primary power and authority, especially in leadership, lawmaking, property ownership, and cultural influence. In a patriarchal system, male perspectives, priorities, and leadership styles tend to shape the rules, norms, and expectations of society. And it's interesting, the things that I learn when I do my research on my podcast. So the word itself comes from two Greek roots, patri, meaning father, and arch, meaning rule or authority. So at its most literal level, patriarchy means rule of the fathers. But in modern conversation, it refers to something broader than fathers and families. It truly describes a system of power and cultural expectations, where men dominate positions of authority in politics, business, religion, and institutions. So let's jump in to the quiet failure of the patriarchy. The problem is not that men lead. The problem is that too many men refuse to hold other men accountable. And as I've watched what's happened with Jeffrey Epstein and the way that the men who are involved in that have not been held accountable, except for a few, because higher ups have chosen to do that, for the most part, the men involved in that have not been held accountable. And yet the women are the ones who have been traumatized and scarred and basically pushed into silence. When I saw what came up with the Cesar Chavez investigation, there was another male, although not a white male, a male of color, who basically dominated and used women in a way that he wanted to, and was called out for it. And if it weren't for Dolores Huerta at 96 years old, coming out and saying, not only did that happen to me, I didn't know that he was grooming young girls at the same time. She finally at 96 had the courage to speak out. And it just infuriated me to think that that's the system that women leaders operate in, that men created for them to be successful. And as a man, I know that the patriarchy was designed for me to be successful. It doesn't matter my identity. I can be successful in this patriarchal system because it was set up for me. So I'm going to start with a story. Years ago, I sat in a meeting where a woman calmly explained that a leadership decision was hurting her team. She spoke clearly and respectfully. The room went quiet. A few men shifted in their chairs. Someone made a joke to lighten the moment. Another leader quickly moved the conversation in a different direction. No one addressed what she had just said. Later, several people admitted privately that she was right. But in the moment, no one challenged the silence. That moment has stayed with me because it revealed something deeper about how power often works in our institutions. I call it the courage gap. The real failure of the patriarchy is not that men lead. The real failure is that too many men refuse to hold other men accountable. When power protects itself, silence becomes the price of belonging. When power protects itself, silence becomes the power of belonging. Harm gets normalized, truth stays quiet, and the people who speak up are left standing alone. The biggest leadership crisis in America today is not about intelligence or talent. It is about the lack of courage to hold power accountable. Systems reward loyalty to power instead of responsibility to people. When this happens, insiders protect insiders. People who raise concerns are isolated, and harmful behavior quietly survives. This is how unhealthy leadership cultures continue. For generations, we as Americans were taught that strong leaders dominate, control, and never show weakness. Leaders were defined through authority, competition, and emotional distance. Many of us grew up believing that this was simply how leadership worked. And yet that model is breaking down. Instead of producing trust and stability, it has protected bad behavior, silenced too many voices, and created a culture where powerful people rarely face consequences. The leadership system, the patriarchy that shaped this country, is no longer serving it. And we have an accountability gap. The problem is not that men lead. The problem is that patriarchy protects power from accountability. One of the defining features of patriarchy is that too many men stay silent when other men cause harm, and that silence allows the harm to continue. We see this pattern everywhere. Abusive language gets dismissed as locker room talk. Powerful leaders quietly resign instead of facing consequences. Complaints disappear to protect reputations, and men remain silent rather than challenge another man's harmful behavior, and that pattern repeats itself. A man crosses a line, others look away, the system absorbs the behavior and moves on. Over time, boys and men absorb a dangerous lesson. Loyalty to the group matters more than honesty. Silence becomes the price of belonging. Most people have witnessed some version of this moment. A woman raises a concern and the room suddenly becomes quiet. Someone cracks a joke to ease the tension. A leader quickly changes the subject. After the meeting, people whisper that she was right. I didn't make up that story that I started with. And the saddest part is that in the moment when it mattered most, no one said anything. These moments happen in offices, schools, political spaces, and community organizations across the country every day. Over time, they teach everyone in the room something important. Some truths are not welcome when power is involved. Why do so many men stay silent? Many people assume men stay silent because they support harmful behavior. The truth is often more complicated. From an early age, we as boys absorb unwritten rules about masculinity. Do not embarrass another man. Do not show too much emotion. Do not appear weak. Protect your place in the hierarchy. Breaking those rules carry consequences. Men who challenge other men may lose influence, opportunity, or belonging. So silence feels safer, and yet silence has a cost. When misogyny, harassment, or disrespect go unchallenged, those behaviors slowly become normalized. What begins as one person's harmful action becomes something anyone feels they have to tolerate. Many men feel the tension when something is wrong. They notice, they can feel the discomfort in the room. But patriarchy teaches them to ignore that instinct. Real courage for men is not protecting each other from accountability. Real courage is protecting the integrity of the community. While men are protected, women are often placed in a no-win situation. Speak up and risk retaliation, or stay silent and carry the burden. Leadership systems built on dominance reward control, aggression, and emotional detachment. When women lead with empathy, collaboration, emotional intelligence, and relational awareness, those strengths are often dismissed as weaknesses. So women face a difficult choice: lead authentically and risk marginalization, or adopt patriarchal behaviors just to survive. Either way, the system remains intact, and our country loses the leadership qualities it needs most. I remember working with a CEO a number of years ago, a woman who, in our workshop, we were talking about relational leadership and the importance of emotional intelligence and being able to be vulnerable and speak through the heart. And I was working with her and her team. And all of a sudden, she broke into tears. And everybody just stopped because we didn't know what she was experiencing. And she had made it to the top of a Fortune 1000 company and was the CEO. And she said, "This conversation is so hurtful to me right now because getting to the top in a male-dominated patriarchal leadership structure means that I had to give up a lot of the emotionality that made me who I am. I had to give up being vulnerable. I had to become that dominant person, that unemotional person that I saw men being that allowed them to make it to the top." And the reason she was crying is because she didn't know if she could get back to the emotionality that made her who she is. That hurt my heart. And that's a real story that I'm sure is replicated in so many ways every day in this country. So what's the cost to our culture of this patriarchy? The effects of patriarchy go far beyond politics or workplaces. They shape our national culture. Public conversations become insults instead of ideas. Leaders gain influence through dominance rather than wisdom. And policies are made without listening to the people most effective. And if you look at our country and our world today, in 2026, all of those things are happening. When leadership becomes about hierarchy instead of responsibility, everyday Americans begin to feel invisible. How many of you out there today feel invisible? Feel like your needs aren't being met or that you're not being listened to? So what that leads to is trust erodes and communities fracture. And I facilitate and do mediation work enough in communities to know that that is happening. Easily, 3-4 times a week, I'll be in a group where somebody says, "I don't trust you. I can't speak my truth in this community because of the way I'll be treated." And when people lose trust in leadership, democracy itself begins to weaken. So let's talk about a different model of leadership. Real change is not simply replacing men with women. Real change means replacing a system built on domination with one built on shared accountability. Remember, this patriarchal structure has been in place for hundreds of years, and it's built on domination. So what could a healthier leadership culture look like? Well, it would be where leaders value accountability over loyalty. Imagine that. Courage to speak over silence. Collaboration and working together over domination. Emotional intelligence over emotional suppression. And relationship over hierarchy. Even the word emotional intelligence has been politicized to the point where some people think it's bad to be emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is the ability to be empathetic and to feel someone else's feelings and to be able to express my own feelings. And everyone has emotional intelligence, and everyone's emotional intelligence can grow if we choose to do our work. And leadership is not about controlling others. Leadership is about responsibility for the well-being of the community, the entire community, whether you have the same perspective as that other person or not, whether you believe in the same thing or not. Men can challenge harmful behavior rather than protecting it. Women can lead without abandoning their relational strengths. And communities can help shape decisions instead of simply watching power concentrate at the top. We're in a moment right now. It's a very defining moment. Right now, the old leadership model is beginning to crack. And I would submit to you it's probably been cracking for a number of years. People are tired of leaders who divide instead of unite. Some people, I will say, some people really enjoy leaders who are divisive. I'm not one of them. And I hope that I'm not a leader who's divisive. And if I am, that somebody will check me on that and let me know when I do that. Many people are tired of watching powerful people avoid consequences. Things that if I caught doing, I would have to be accountable to them right away, and I'd have some kind of reprimand for that behavior. And I think people are looking for something simpler, like a leader that honors people's humanity, leadership that feels human. Systems rarely change on their own. For the men who are dominating from a patriarchy, there's no impetus to change because the system serves them. For those of us who aren't in those positions of power, though, that system has to change. Because leading through a perspective of dominating somebody else is leading to wars all over the world. And yet cultures only change when enough people decide they will no longer stay silent. I can no longer stay silent about this. And everyone listening has a choice. So, what does this moment require? Real change will not come only from electing someone new or changing policies. Because if we're electing someone new into the same patriarchal structure, whether they're a man or woman, there either is going to have to be business as usual for the man or conformity for the woman. Real change happens in everyday moments. When a man hears another man speak disrespectfully about women and says that is not okay. When leaders refuse to protect colleagues who abuse their power or are afraid of those people who basically say, I'm going to bully you. I'm going to make your life miserable in a whole variety of ways. When organizations reward empathy, integrity, and collaboration instead of ego and aggression. When women's voices are not just tolerated, they're truly valued. The future of this country will not be decided only in political arenas. It will be shaped by whether everyday people choose to build a culture where accountability matters more than loyalty to power. I truly believe that a healthier America is possible, and I also believe that it requires courage. Because I don't believe leadership was meant to be about dominance. And if that's the system that it was created, it's time to disrupt it. Because the leadership that we need today is about responsibility for each other. So I want you to think about this whole idea of a patriarchal structure. And if you're a man, how is it serving you? If you're a marginalized woman or somebody who is being dominated, how can you find your voice? And this is not easy. If it was easy, we would have already solved for it. And yet we all play a role. And what I ask you to do is not to just listen to this and say, I agree with him, or I don't agree with him, or he's an idiot and I don't care. I mean, you can do those things and just know it's not going to serve anyone. in relationship to change. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I would love for you to think about the role that you can play in the organization or the community spaces that you move in and out of in terms of balancing whose voices are at the table. And just remember, leadership is about responsibility for each other. It's about moving from our head to our heart and leading with heart. You're listening to the Origination Point Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to listen thoughtfully to what I'm sharing with you, and find somebody to have a conversation with. Ask them what they think about it. Do your own research around the patriarchy and see what you come up with. We're all in this together. We're all part of a large community called the human race. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your questions. There's a link to my website, and if you have a question, if you want to get our newsletter, just click the link and you will be connected to a community of people who are also wanting to see a change. And remember, keep growing.